I'm Paul Guthrie. Thank you for watching. This video explains the meaning of the phrase, the hills of West Asia. As you know, in the teachings of W.D. Farad, the hills of West Asia refers to the geographic area known as the Caucasus Mountains. Well, today I'd like to share with you how the words, the hills of West Asia, how that phrase itself shows that W.D. Farad comes from India, and not, as is often believed, from Mecca, Arabia. You can watch our Get on Board the Wheel documentary series for many proofs and evidence related to that issue. What we're looking at now is a globe. On this map we can see Arabia, we can see India, and we can see the Caucasus Mountains. Let's start by refamiliarizing ourselves with this map and with a few of the features discussed in Part 1 of the Get on Board the Wheel documentary series. First, let's start with India. In ancient times, India was the root of civilization in Asia. Of course, the presence of human beings and the presence of civilization or high culture first appears on the African continent. Today, however, we're looking at the root of civilization in the continent of Asia, or the root of civilization in Asia as it's been described in the Supreme Wisdom Lesson Book and as it's taught by W.D. Farad. In ancient times, India was home to what's variously been called the Indus Valley or Harappan civilization. The Indus Valley culture existed contemporaneous with the high cultures of ancient Egypt as well as the culture of ancient Sumer. The red markings on this map shows the locations of major archaeological sites, each of which made up parts of the Indus Valley civilization. We can take a closer look at just one of these mini sites and see for ourselves what remains of the architecture, the sewer systems, the city streets, which many thousands of years ago inundated the entire Indus Valley region. This part of India is 2,200 miles by land from the Caucasus Mountains. To travel by land from this part of India to the Caucasus Mountains, one would have to begin by traveling westward and then northwestward. Halfway between India and the Caucasus Mountains, at a distance of 1,100 miles, there is an oasis or fertile spot, which is shown here. The second leg of the trip completes the 2,200-mile distance in the region known as the Caucasus Mountains or the hills of West Asia. When we compare the historical and archaeological evidence of ancient India with that of Mecca, we can see that India is much older and that it covers or influences a much greater geographic region. Looking at Mecca, all we see is a modern, typical Western city. The only pre-modern evidence we see is the Kaaba. Historians and archaeologists agree that Mecca, Arabia is not an ancient city. There is no record or evidence that Mecca existed prior to the 4th century after the Christian era. So Mecca was first founded as a medieval town. This means that Mecca wasn't even a town until approximately 2,500 years after ancient India had already fallen. This is why Mecca is not on any ancient map. This is why the people of ancient Egypt never mentioned it. They don't mention it because it wasn't there in ancient times. This is an important fact if we are to discern which of the two can rightly be called the root of civilization in Asia. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this talk that the phrase, the hills of West Asia, proves that W.D. Farad comes from India, and here's how we can prove that. The key word West Asia tells us that it's in the west of something. West Asia means it must be west of something. There cannot be an east nor west without there being something in the middle, a center, a root, or a point of reference from which other things are west of. The lessons refer to this point of reference as the root of civilization. The root of civilization is that point from which the other geographic measurements are made. According to what he taught, W.D. Farad comes from the root of civilization. Looking at this map, we can see that the Caucasus Mountains, or the hills of West Asia, are not to the west of Mecca. If Mecca was the root of civilization described in the lessons, then the Caucasus region cannot be called the hills and caves of West Asia, because the Caucasus Mountains are not to the west of Mecca. From Mecca, the Caucasus Mountains lay to the east. It's only when measuring from the root from India that the Caucasus Mountains can rightly be called the hills of West Asia. This is because measuring from India, the Caucasus Mountains are in fact in the west. The hills and caves of West Asia lay to the west of India. So, every time you hear the phrase, the hills of West Asia, think to yourself, west of what? If the teachings refer to them as the hills of West Asia, what are they west of? And the answer is the Caucasus Mountains are west of the root of civilization in Asia. They are west of India. Thus, the phrase, the hills of West Asia, is further proof that W.D. Farad comes not from Mecca, but rather he comes from India. If the information covered in this talk is of help to you, be certain to subscribe to and be sure to watch the Get on Board the Wheel documentary series. I'm Paul Guthrie, saying thank you again for watching.